In this video, I'll demonstrate how to document a work-based learning pathway plan. Just a quick recap on work-based learning and facilitation first though. Work-based learning is where a person learns something primarily on the job. An employee being sent off to do a classroom-based course as part of his or her job therefore is not strictly speaking work-based learning. But as we've discovered earlier in this section of the course, the workplace creates a wonderful opportunity for learning to occur despite the challenges that it presents. A work-based learning pathway plan is fairly similar to the learning programs you have previously developed, but in this case, it is developed for a single person who will learn everything primarily on the job with their work colleagues. Just like in the other videos, the demonstration and examples presented here are done so with the assumption that we have already collected the necessary information and consulted with all the people involved in the learning process. So let's open the work-based learning pathway plan template available in this section of the website. To see the finished product, you may also want to access the completed example. The example we are using here once again is of a fictional production company called Star Rider Production Services. This time though, the learning program is being developed for an individual called Jonas Flynn, who is a stagehand and the person who helps load all the sound and video equipment in and out of the truck and sets it up whenever there's a concert or event. The company needs additional skilled staff to look after smaller events and feels that promoting from within the company has many more benefits over external recruitment. So at the top here, we'll just identify the learner, Jonas, and the facilitator, Marcel. In your assessment, the facilitator will be you, and we're also putting here Jonas's supervisor, Rod. And we'll just put the workplace here. I'm sure by now you should be getting quite familiar with why we use learning objectives all the time. The learning process is rarely anywhere near as effective without them, and we always like to identify these as early as possible because they give us an end point to work backwards from. So here in the learning objectives section, there's a bit of information, but essentially the objectives are: at the completion of this learning pathway, Jonas must be able to demonstrate that he can set up a small audio-visual rig correctly, quickly and confidently, operate the equipment correctly, take down a small AV rig correctly and efficiently, ensuring a neat and tidy pack-up, load the van correctly and safely and drive to and from the venue, be confident, polite, professional and courteous to clients, and dress appropriately. And you can see here the asterisk next to some of these words like correctly and appropriately, and that's basically just to refer to this footnote. Correctly, appropriately means in accordance with organisational procedures and expectations, product specifications, or industry standards. Ideally, the company needs Jonas ready for the busy October-January season, so there are 10 weeks in which to achieve these objectives. So the learning objectives have been made to be as specific and measurable as possible. Another source of valuable information to make a successful work-based learning pathway is this next section, learner characteristics and style. Most of what you've been doing so far has dealt with group-based learning where learner characteristics and styles were many and varied. In a work-based learning pathway, you're designing for a single person, and that allows you to really tailor the learning to their characteristics and style. So what have we found out about our learner? Well, he has been a stagehand and loader for the company for the past 18 months. Before that, he worked for various crewing labour hire companies, so he certainly has the experience in the field. Jonas also plays in a local band, so he's likely to have some good background knowledge into the technical side of audio. Jonas has a current driver's license and is often seen driving the smaller equipment trucks to and from the shows. Jim Martin, Jonas's current crew manager, says he's very quick to pick up new skills by watching the senior production crew. He is known to sometimes act a bit too confidently without a full understanding, which sometimes causes safety concerns. Jonas has confirmed he hates the theory stuff but loves learning by watching and working with others, and also by doing. Jonas thinks he could probably start the AV work now without any training. He holds relevant tickets for working at heights, confined spaces, and has his OHS white card. So already there we have a lot of useful information about the learner that we can use to customize the learning plan appropriately. In this next section we have contractual requirements. You need to be aware if there are any, because it will have an impact on your plan, especially in regards to timing, reporting, and record keeping. Probably the most common situation is when the work-based learning pathway is for an apprenticeship or traineeship. We're just keeping it simple for this one, so no contractual requirements. External learning. This is for if your learner is going off to do any classroom or off-the-job training. In our example, all the learning is to be conducted on the job. Supervisory arrangements. Remember, as confident as our learner seems, as part of the learning process he may be undertaking jobs that he is not yet qualified or experienced enough to do without supervision. Also, in work-based learning, rarely does the learner learn from the same person the whole time. So it's important to detail who will be supervising at different points along the way. Not to mention the possible ramifications if there was an accident or incident caused by an unqualified or unapproved worker. Next section is the monitoring arrangements. So we're just specifying here who's overseeing the whole thing to make sure the objectives are actually achieved along the way. Next is the description of the workplace, and that might seem pretty obvious if you're designing this for a workplace where you're employed, but quite often work-based learning may involve others who aren't familiar with the workplace, so it's a good opportunity to say, this is the way we do things around here. So I'll just put this text in here and you can read it in full in your own time. And so now we come to the actual pathway. This is where you put the steps in place that allow gradual progression towards achieving those learning objectives. We divide the table into what, how, who, when, and where. Or more specifically, objective, activity, staff, timing, and date and location. Do you remember the learning objectives we identified on the first page of the plan? We're simply breaking each of those down into manageable portions here in the objective column. And that way we can plan out work activities that will help Jonas achieve those objectives. So for example, our first set of objectives are to set up a small AV rig correctly, quickly, and confidently. Take down a small AV rig correctly and efficiently, ensuring a neat and tidy pack-up. Load the van correctly and safely and drive to and from the venue. And we're going to help him learn to achieve those objectives first by observing and assisting the technician in loading, setting up, taking down and packing equipment into the van for an awards night. Jonas is to observe the technician during operation and assist where needed. So you can see here our learner is doing part of the job, but we've identified some techniques for how he can learn as well. In the staff column, we've identified Billy Parker, who's an audio-visual technician. And this is a common and effective work-based learning technique, buddying with more experienced workers. One of the things you'll also notice in the completed example is how gradually our learner takes on more and more responsibility. We'll just put in timing and date and location here too. So I've just put in another 3 similar jobs that our learner will attain, again, in an attempt to achieve those same learning objectives on the side here. If you'll recall from an earlier video, as effective as it can be, one of the potential downsides to buddying with more experienced workers is only being exposed to one technique or style. So we've had the luxury here of being able to send Jonas off to work with Simone so he can see other styles too. In addition, we've got a range of different jobs that he's doing, so he can be exposed to some of the variables. Now, at strategic points along the way, we're going to check progress, debrief learning so far, and do some formative assessment. We need to make sure this process is actually working. That way, if it's not working, changes can be made before too much time is wasted. So we're planning for a meeting with Jonas and Marcel, the facilitator. Remember, in your work-based learning pathway that you do for your assessments, the facilitator is you. For this meeting, we're also bringing in Billy, one of the technicians he's been working with, who can also provide some useful information on his progress. And you'll see in the completed example that the learning pathway continues, and as it does, our learner takes on more and more responsibilities, more complex and challenging tasks, and he progresses through various jobs, activities, and meetings that will hopefully allow him to meet all of those learning objectives that we originally set out to achieve. And it's interesting to go down to the last 3 items in our completed example. You'll see that the last job our learner does is to lead the operations for an entire show without intervention from a senior technician. They actually swap roles so Jonas can have an opportunity to show he can manage the whole process. Also, you'll see that all the learning objectives are included here, so it's sort of a summative assessment. The second last item here is a final meeting to check progress, debrief learning, and this time a proper summative assessment instead of formative assessment, confirm satisfactory performance, and confirm readiness to work entire shows as an AV technician assisted by junior support staff. And that's basically it. If everything goes according to plan, our learner will have achieved the learning objectives, received his promotion, and the company has a new, skilled worker who they've promoted from within. Interestingly, the final part here is actually a review, so the learner, the facilitator, and the manager meet to confirm the outcomes of the learning pathway. And the manager is also going to consider implementing further similar work-based learning pathways if this one was successful. Once you've completed a work-based learning pathway document, get some signatures of agreement. There are a number of people involved here who need to be committed for the process to be successful.